My name is Ken Etete. I provide critical leadership in Century Group. We are mainly in energy infrastructure, tech, and social enterprise. Leadership in uncertain times is a fundamental concern and major discussion point that we'd like to look at today. Now, leadership by itself is really dealing with uncertainties. So you can't define leadership in these times in any particular form, but to look at leadership from a position that you're dealing with uncertainty. So by definition, a leader, mostly in a corporate environment, is an individual who is able to deal with uncertainties. So you're providing leadership with a lot of headwinds. But before I go on, I'd like to give some of the critical factors that you need to be able to deal with uncertainties in your leadership style. Number one in that is your psychological understanding of crisis and uncertainties. So first, in crisis time, you have to provide that calmness and ensure the avoidance of anxiety in the organization, fundamental. Immediately to that is what type of organization do you have? What is the structure of organization you have? Is it a big organization, small organization? How dynamic is the organization? How flexible is the organization? That's very fundamental. Of course, to that, the next fundamental is your human resource, because an organization is what it is because of the human beings that have staffed up that organization. Is it the shareholders, as a management staff, and all of that is key. You have to have the right capital structure, funding. How much funding have you got is very important in times that we cannot be very sure on dealing with. So financing is a key element you need. Now, in addition to these three critical points that I've raised, is your communication structure, how effective you are able to communicate. Now, of course, communication is a function of what you have. Now, some organization can fake a type of communication, but when we are talking about crisis, your ability to communicate and interface with all the dynamics around the organization and the business is very fundamental. So let me now give a bit more context to these key factors that I've tried to highlight in leadership in uncertain times. So we look at the profile of the individual who is taking the leadership position in uncertain times. So first, has to be a dynamic individual, must psychologically understand that crisis is the way of life, uncertainty rather, is the way of life for a leader. So when there are uncertainties, the leader key responsibility is to ensure there's a clear vision and understanding, and ensure that the rest of the organization do not get into a panic mood, which is why we have to avoid anything that will create anxiety. Very important. We've seen that in many real life situations, and that's why it's important that we're not giving any textbook definition to leadership in uncertainties. We're giving you definitions from the situation room, from the streets, as we deal with them, because these uncertainties do not necessarily fully dimension and let you know before they happen. So the first thing you do when you're confronted with that, you have to behave like a good pilot flying an airplane through stormy weather. Whereas the passengers may not be fully aware of what the pilot is dealing with, they only get the bumps. The pilot has sufficient knowledge and skill set to understand that it is stormy weather, and the aircraft is designed to be able to withstand the storms. And that immediate communication to the passenger creates a sense of calmness and faith on that flight. This is exactly the first thing that a leader provides to the rest of the organization. That's avoiding of anxiety by communicating the right positive message. And that only comes if the leader originally already have those skills, have the training or innate to the leader. Of course, the next fundamental is what kind of organization you have. I am not underplaying or underestimating the power and the importance of the human resource. The human resource fit into an organization. So if you don't have the right structure, the best of human beings will not be able to function and produce the quality of results that you expect. So that structure, the organizational structure, the organization that you have is very fundamental, and it has to be such that it depends on the size and the type of business you're into. Do you have the dynamism to restructure, to deal with the uncertainties that you may likely be dealing with or be faced with in that time? Now, the moment that is clearly defined and understood, the next thing is, do you have the right personnel, the right staff manning this organization? Bear in mind, you're dealing with, we are trying to take into consideration a particular situation, uncertainties that have befall us, and we also find this relevant because of the timing, what we're dealing with at the moment, as the globe is contend with so many uncertainties that have been thrown up as a result of the pandemic that we have all witnessed in the last 8 months thereabout. So do you have the people that have the skill set to work with you? So your staff becomes very important. Who is able to pull with you? Who will be able to be assigned certain key responsibility tasks to be able to work with these challenges? Then immediately you have to talk about your capital structure. Your capital structure is wide. Of course, starting with equity, shareholders, then your debt finance, and then your main suppliers, vendors. This is important. If you are not able to manage that whole process, inject new funding, restructure your debts, and get understanding from your key suppliers, and with that in place, you are certain that this can go very well. But I like to wrap it up by looking at what kind of communication structure you have. Any organization dealing with internal and external issues, uncertainty will test your communication skills. Have you got the right infrastructure to provide communication to your internal audience, your internal stakeholders, which are your staff, shareholders, your management staff, and then, of course, external, your regulatory bodies. It's very important that they are fully aware and there's sufficient transparency. Your integrity should never be in doubt, and your communication will reflect that, because if your integrity is in question by your communication, it will all become clear to your stakeholders, and that is a no-no. You have to be absolutely transparent and be sincere with your communication, such that your stakeholders become part of your solution in addressing the problem. But if they become a problem in your uncertain time, then it is whatever else you've done really does not matter. And we've seen over and over multiple cases of good corporate organizations that have basically not been able to communicate. They've done all the other things right, but because they were not able to communicate things in the way that the rest of the stakeholders will appreciate the challenges and can see the clarity of the solutions and support them to overcome it. So that is very fundamental. So in these uncertain times, if you are able to manage these fundamental issues that I've talked about from a practical point, then the chances are that you will survive the uncertainties or the challenges that the uncertainties will throw your way as a corporate leader. So once again, my name is Ken Etete, and I hope that this will provide you some cool, good resource elements that can help you navigate the uncertain times that we're all facing. Thank you very much.